And today, we've been focusing a lot about the culture and the religion itself of Islam. We're gonna do a little bit more culture and some technology and art and architecture that has been contributed to humanity by the Muslim world. So we talked about this a little bit the other day about some of the large Muslim cities. And today, even, these are still like the capital cities of the Muslim world. Mecca is obviously a very important Muslim city. Obviously, it's a place where all Muslims have to go at least once in their life for their pilgrimage. But other large cities that are predominantly Islamic are Baghdad, Damascus, Cordoba, Cairo, and Jerusalem. What country is Baghdad in?
Russia.
It's not Russia. It's really not far, but it starts with an I. Iraq. Damascus starts with an S. Syria. Cordoba also starts with an S. Where? Good guess. Spain. Cairo. Egypt. And Jerusalem. Israel. Very good. So these are your capital cities of the Muslim world, and they still are to a large extent today. And as you can see by this map I have up here that shows like the heaviest populations of Islamic people, and you can see obviously the Arabian Peninsula is almost entirely Islamic. But you see in places like Egypt, North Africa, much of the Middle East, heavily influenced by the Muslim world, by the Muslim faith, Islam. Okay? Now, within these cities and within the Muslim world, their way of living and culture is much different than ours. In America, we have the separation of church and state. You have freedom of religion. It's not so much like that in the Muslim world, because government and religion are linked. They're combined together, okay? And as a result of that, their society is going to look a lot different. Their social classes are going to be different, all right? So another pyramid. We always have, pyramid. America doesn't have, pyramid. Ours is more like a diamond with our social classes. But pyramid of social classes in Muslim cities. At the very bottom, this is more for the ancient world. Not a lot of slaves of war anymore, okay? But at the very bottom, you have the slaves, and they're not going to be Muslim at all. So they're non-Muslim. They could be anything else. They could be pagans, Christians, Jews, didn't matter. If you were conquered and you're not Muslim, you would be at the bottom. You would be at the bottom. Usually this is prisoners of war. The next step up is called the people of the book, also known as the protected people. They're called protected people. These are people that belong to other monotheistic religions, such as Christians and Jews. These are not people who were conquered. These are simply just people that are in the city that are not Muslim, but they believe in a monotheistic religion, like Christianity, like Judaism. People of the book were protected people. All right? Next step up are people that are Muslim but were not born Muslim. They converted. Many Christians who converted to Islam because they felt like they were going to be living in this area and they felt like it would be the best way for them to be more upwardly mobile and have a better chance in society. They're called Janissaries, and we're going to look at them tomorrow or next time. But these are simply people that converted to Islam. So their parents were not Muslims, but they didn't make the decision to become Muslims. All right? And then at the top, Muslims at birth, people who are born into the faith. So this is how society works in a Muslim world. Totally different than what we have, Ours is based on what? Money. Now, That being said, who do you think the wealthiest people are here? People at the top, the Muslims at birth. So the money is actually still tied in this way. Okay? It's just done a little. But theirs is based on what your religion is. You can be, believe in a flying spaghetti monster and be a gajillionaire in America, doesn't matter. So, but that is not the case in the Muslim world. Money and your religious affiliation are tied together. Okay? So questions on this pyramid. All right. Women is in Islam. We talked about this before a little bit. But to give you a little quote from the Quran, I showed you how big the book is, but one quote from it says that men are the managers of the affairs of women. Men are managers of the affairs of women. And a message to women says, righteous women are therefore obedient. So essentially, the way many Muslims interpret this is that men make the decisions, and it's the woman's job to follow, to listen, and obey. Okay? So, when it comes to spiritual equality, men and women were equal in the eyes of Allah. But that's it. Politically, socially, not the same. It is totally male-dominated. All Muslim women, they were to care for their children and do whatever their husband says, the way he says to do it, and as fast as he says to do it. Without question. Unquestioning loyalty to the husband and obedience. Okay? Now, if you're a woman in the Muslim world, in one of these cities, for example, your role is also going to vary depending upon if your husband is very wealthy or if your husband's very poor. If you have a very wealthy husband, your job is probably going to be to oversee the servants, to supervise the slaves, to ensure that the house is being operated efficiently and effectively. Unless your husband wants to do it, and then it's totally up to him, because it's whatever your husband says goes. Whereas if you are a poor woman, you will probably just do whatever your husband does and help him. If your husband is a farmer, you're going to be out there farming in the fields. You just do what your husband does. And if you're not married, you do what your dad does. Help your dad. So women are really seen as kind of an afterthought in the Muslim world, as secondary importance. And the cue for this comes from the Quran. That men are the affairs of the managers of women. That women are supposed to be obedient. All right? So that's where that idea comes from. Okay. Now, is it the same as it was 1,000 years ago? Absolutely not. Is it the same in all parts of the Muslim world? No, it's different. It depends on where you are. Okay? I'm not going to say this is a blanket thing for all Muslims. All right? Okay. Questions on that? All right, so now, if you remember, we've talked about other ancient civilizations like the Greeks, and we talked about the Romans. Well, the Greeks, they're gone. The Roman Empire fell apart. And all that knowledge that the Greeks and the Romans had kind of disappeared with it, with the Greeks and the Romans, as they were conquered by barbarians. However, if you recall, people like Alexander the Great, when he spread his Greek culture to places like Persia, it created a new culture called Hellenistic. And that Hellenistic culture, spread by people like Alexander the Great, was preserved by Arabs on the Arabian Peninsula. meaning they didn't just burn all the books whenever a regime changed, which was not an uncommon thing. Somebody else takes over, you eliminate all traces of the former people there. Well, that was not an uncommon thing. They would just destroy everything. The Arabs would not do this. They preserved all knowledge. In fact, they even had a library. And it's the best name for a library ever. It's called the House of Wisdom. Is that not a great name for a library? The House of Wisdom. And they would preserve, it was just like literally a library. And this is, some illustrations here that show aspects of the House of Wisdom. The Arabs even translated a lot of material so that other Arabs could read Greek knowledge. They translated the works of Plato and Aristotle into Arabic so that their knowledge could be shared with other Arabs. All right? So Arabs, very much education and learning, very important, very important. Well, for men, for men. All right. Other Arabian technology. This is a device called an astrolabe. Astrolabe. It is an Arab design. The Arabs perfected it. A sailor would use an astrolabe. And think of this as like an ancient GPS. You use the astrolabe by finding stars in the sky, and then you use the dials on the astrolabe to perform mathematical equations, and the way in which you do the steps that you take and the data that you get from the astrolabe will help you determine your position on the Earth by using the location of stars and planets in the sky.
So a super complicated compass?
Yeah, super complicated compass. Pretty brilliant, though. I mean, heck, we have people today that still think the Earth is flat. They're using this little mechanical device to determine location on the planet using stars in the heavens. Pretty brilliant. Knowledge and learning was very important to the Arabs. Okay, they also made extremely advancements in the area of medicine, medical advancements. The man shown here on the left, his name is Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina. I have it spelled out for you right there. Ibn Sina. He wrote a medical encyclopedia. Do you guys know what an encyclopedia is? Does any of your all's grandparents have encyclopedias on a bookshelf? Like a book that just has a letter A on it, and inside it has everything that you could want to know about any word that starts with the letter A? That's an encyclopedia, okay? It is a collection of knowledge. And he wrote an encyclopedia on medicine and medical things. And he does this, pretty early on, through around the year 1000. And for 500 years, his medical encyclopedia becomes the main medical textbook used in Europe for 500 years. That's good in that it was that advanced, but it's also bad. Can you imagine? You go to the doctor and they're using technology that was created 500 years ago. I'll just stay home, right? So, but it took a while, but he discusses the contagious nature of diseases. There's no such thing as a microscope then, guys. They don't know about germs. They don't know how you get sick from each other, that germs exist. But he knows that certain diseases are contagious. Like if you are coughing and have a runny nose, and I get around you, and then tomorrow I'm coughing and have a runny nose, I've probably caught that from you. But if you have cancer, I don't catch cancer from you. Cancer is not a contagious disease. Now, they knew about cancer. They knew about it. They just didn't know how, about the collection of cells. He also knew that some diseases were contagious and some were not. And that's one of the things he talks about in his encyclopedia, about the contagious nature of diseases. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Islamic art and architecture. As you might imagine, religion is extremely important in the Muslim world. And so the majority of their creative efforts are going to be put into their religious buildings. And what is the name of a Muslim church? A mosque. And so mosques get the majority of the attention when it comes to art and architecture. Many mosques have these towers. See the towers? This one has a bunch. This one has 6 towers. These towers have a name. They're called minarets. Minarets. M-I-N-A-R-E-T. Minaret. A minaret is just a tower where a person, like this guy, who's called a muezzin, he climbs that tower 5 times a day. And what do you think he does when he gets up there?
Praise.
Good guess. It has to do with prayer.
He yells at his people to pray.
Come pray. It is time to come and pray. Come into the mosque and pray.
Who says that?
The muezzin. And that is what this gentleman is doing. Now today they have loudspeakers. Okay? But those speakers, guess where they're placed? On the towers. Okay? But they didn't always have loudspeakers for, 1,500 years or so. No loudspeakers. And so a man named a muezzin would go do the call to prayer. Hey, everybody, it's time to pray. But he does it in a chant, okay? It's time to pray. So 5 times a day, someone lets everyone know it's time to pray. So on a mosque, there are minarets, which are towers, and the muezzin climbs the minaret to do the call to prayer. In a mosque, there are minarets, and the muezzin climbs the minaret to do the call to prayer.
How do you spell it?
It is for Muslims. Minaret, M-I-N-A-R-E-T. M-I-N-A-R-E-T. Okay? Now, these are, we're pretty far away, and you can't really tell, but you see the domes, you see the towers. That's part of Arab architecture. They also have this thing, it's called, can anybody pronounce this A word right here? No, nobody. Arabesque, thank you so much. Everybody else always says arabesque.
I think that was on the
Barbie
I
movie.
used to watch Barbie movies. I think that was on.
That's wonderful. I'm not familiar with Barbie or her movies. Arabesque. It is a type of architectural style. You guys have probably heard of other architectural styles like Gothic or Roman. You've probably heard of them. You may not be able to identify them. You will. I'll help you identify them later. But it's very easy to identify Arabesque art and architecture. It uses plants entwined in geometric figures. So here you see like circles, and this is a square, and the circles and the square are made of plants. That is Arabesque. See the ivy, and it's kind of entwined. Here you see like oval, circle, the arch, which is taken from the Romans, by the way. And you see plants entwined in geometric figures. That is Arabesque architecture. Plants entwined into geometric figures. That is Arabesque architecture. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about the mosques and minarets and muezzins, architecture, or social classes? You getting a pretty good grasp of the Muslim world? Okay, next time we're going to see how individuals within the Muslim world spread Muslim culture and how they create empires. We'll talk about people like Mahmed and Osman and Suleiman the Lawgiver, like individual famous Muslims.